How you guys doing this morning? I hope you're having a good summer. We had a big week in our family. This week we welcomed our second granddaughter. I couldn't wait to tell you about it. But don't worry, I'm not gonna be one of those pastors who's like showing you pictures and showing you videos and trying to say how much cuter our kids are than your, no. That's Banks, our granddaughter, meeting her little sister Benji for the first time this week. So yay. Did anybody, thank you. Beat that for your week. Hey, if we're visiting for the first time, we've never met before. My name is Jason, and I love getting to serve here as one of the pastors on staff. Today, we're in a series called Psalms of Summer, and we're wrapping up our summer by going through some of the Psalms in the Bible. If you have a Bible, you can start turning to Psalm 103 is where we're going to be today. And today's message is entitled, Why We Worship. And the reason we're going through the Psalms is we're looking at how to incorporate worship in our everyday life so that it's not just something we do at church. And sometimes I know people, when they're new to church, they ask like, why is it that Christians always sing when they get together? Why are they clapping their hands? Why is that dude in the front row waving his hands like he's washing the windows or something, right? And if you're new to church and you kind of are wondering why there's always singing and worship, we're going to talk about that today. And even if you're somebody who's been around church for a long time and maybe you love worshiping and you love, singing to God, I think today's going to maybe shift some of the things in your perspective and help you understand not only why we sing and worship, but how significant it is and God means for it to be in our lives on a regular basis. If you've been around church for a while, you probably know worship is not just the singing part before the sermon at church. Worship is a whole way of living life unto God. You worship God with your finances. When you give, you worship God in your relationships. You worship God by being obedient to Him. But today we're going to talk specifically about the part of a church service or when you're at home and you're singing songs to God. For some of you, you're used to singing. You love music. It feels kind of natural. For some of you, I don't know, I like to just get to church for the message part, the important part. If you've ever thought that before, you're gonna be having your toes stepped on today just a little bit, just to give you a warning. So it was years ago, I heard a pastor went out onto the front of the church after service and a lady pulled him aside. Pastor, I didn't think worship was very good this morning. We're not doing any of the hymns anymore. It was too loud. If I'm being honest, it just wasn't very good. I didn't like it. And he's like, well, that's okay. It wasn't for you. I'm like, I wanted to be that pastor. I wanted to think of that right thing to say. Many of us, whether for good or bad, we often think of worship kind of like a concert to give us inspiration for our week. And it's not bad to be inspired. It's great when you come into the house of God and people are worshiping together. That's a good thing. But what we have to be careful of is to not get the purpose and the intention and the direction of worship flipped. Worship is not a concert for you. Worship is a concert you're putting on for God. You're the headliner of the concert and you're the one singing for God. Some of you are like, well, if you heard my voice, it doesn't matter. He loves to hear the sound of your voice. And today we're going to learn that worship is not about what we get, but it's about what we give to God. Worship is something that we give to God. And I know that we often get peace, we feel blessed, we feel at home, we get forgiveness. There's all these things that come, but the purpose of worship is not for you. It's for you to come and give God your praise, your honor, your adoration. And so today in Psalm 103, we'll get there in just a second, we're going to be reading one of the Psalms of David, where he gives us some really good instruction about worship. But I first want us to read Hebrews 13:15, which says, through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise. Continually meaning this is just how we live. It's a part of our lives. And when we give a sacrifice, it's something that costs us that we offer to God. It's not something we get to take from God. And so the theology of worship being our opportunity to give back versus receiving is, I really think, the most foundational starting point. Even if you're like, I love worship. Worship was so good today. They sang my favorite song. I got goosebumps. Good, but you can worship God without the goosebumps. You can worship if it's even a song you're just learning for the first time. And if you're honest, you don't really like it that much. That's okay. It's not for you, right? So when we come into church, we don't come in late going, I'll get there in time for the important part. No, you're missing the part where you get to actually give something back to God. I don't know if you know this, God doesn't need anything, but he does desire and he loves our worship when we give it to him. So today in Psalm 103, let's read together. The author of this psalm, King David, starts with these words, bless the Lord, O my soul. So who is he talking to? He's actually talking to himself. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Can we read that verse out loud together? Let's read it with enthusiasm together. Here we go. Bless the Lord, O my soul, all that is within me, bless his holy name. If you're taking notes today, I want you to write this down. Worship is our chance to bless God back. It's a very unique and special opportunity to bless the God who doesn't need to be blessed. And I don't know about you, but whenever I think of us blessing God, I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. God's the blessor, I'm the blessee, right? If somebody sneezes, right, you don't go, Jason, bless you. You say, God bless you. God is the one who blesses. And even though, again, God doesn't need anything from us, when we worship him, it blesses him. It puts a smile in his heart. He enjoys out of the whole planet this morning, when you were singing, God intimately heard and felt your love and adoration toward him. You can actually affect the God of the universe, who's holding all things together, who created you from dust. He's paying attention to you when you sing to him. And he loves when you worship him. And so when we come to church, we're coming bringing this present, this gift of saying, God, after all you've done for me, I don't know what I can give you, but today I'm gonna give you my heart in worship. I don't know if you've ever had a friend or somebody in your life who kind of has everything. So when Christmas or the birthday comes around, you're like, shoot, what am I gonna get? Like, I don't know what to give you. When I was in college, I was as broke as you were when you were probably in college. And one of my really good friends was a publicist for some Hollywood like A-list celebrities. And so he made a lot of money. He had a lot of stuff. But on top of it, like all these watch companies and suit companies, they would just send stuff to his house because like his house was the address for the celebrities. And so he had just a ridiculous amount of like fashion stuff and everything. And so every Christmas, he'd be like just giving me these like hand-me-downs that were meant for these actors. And then I'd be like, Jeff, you tip a waiter at the restaurant more than I make in a month. Like, I don't know what to give you. You know, there was nothing I could give. And in one sense, when we worship God, it's like we can't really give anything to the God who, all of the oceanfront property in La Jolla is his footstool. Like, he needs nothing. But he loves and desires and appreciates our worship. And that needs to hit. Like, you need to get that when you show up here and you begin to sing to God, he's hearing it. And it brings joy to the God, the creator of the universe. And it's a way for us to give back to him when really there's nothing we could ever do to give anything to him. So we give him our heart. In Hebrews 13, it talked about being a sacrifice of praise. And for some of you, when you come to church, you love the music, the worship portion. In fact, some of you are like, I like that part. I wish the preaching part would be shorter. And my wife, when we travel, if we go to another church or whatever, like she wants to be in there at the very beginning. Her hands are already up before the worship team is starting. She has a beautiful voice. I probably would love worship as much as she did if I had that voice too. I'm kind of more like the guy that's like, let's grab some coffee, hang out in the lobby for a minute, get in like, halfway through the last song, and I'll definitely worship. I know you guys like, you're a pastor. I'm just being vulnerable with you guys, okay? And oftentimes I don't feel it the way some people feel it. But over the years, God has begun to soften my heart through worship to where even though sometimes I know when I'm starting out, I'm not feeling it, as I began to give a sacrifice of praise. God, my voice isn't very good. My mind might be scattered with other thoughts, but I'm gonna take all that and push it aside, and I'm gonna offer you a sacrifice of praise. That I know that he receives it just as much as the lady with the tambourine who's just like leaning in the church, you know? And God enjoys when we worship him. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Verse 2, he repeats it again. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Psalm 103:2. And he's telling his soul, whether you feel it or not, you're gonna bless God. If you know anything about the author of this psalm, King David, well, obviously was a king. He was a warrior. He was constantly being pursued by enemies. He was running a nation that was always at war. I'm sure his mind was constantly distracted. I'm sure his life was constantly filled with reasons to be doing other things. And yet he wrote so many of the Psalms and he spent so much of his time blessing God. And I'm sure sometimes he had to just go, you will bless the Lord, O my soul. Even though you want to obsess about this enemy, even though you want to be worried about this or that. And it's this choice to say, God, there's nothing more important than you. There's nothing happening in my life more important than focusing my attention and my love and my affection toward you. And then in verse 2, the second half, he says, and forget not all his benefits. And he starts listing off for the rest of the psalm all the benefits of being a worshiper of God, of being a child of God. Let me just read with you starting in verse 3. He says, don't forget the benefits. He forgives all your iniquities. He heals all your diseases. He redeems your life from destruction. Who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfies your mouth with good things so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. And what happens when we worship God is, you'll often see this too, when our worship leaders are leading us here, they're helping us recount and remember all of God's goodness and faithfulness to us. If you're taking notes today, would you write this down? Worship reminds us of God's goodness and his faithfulness. It's a way that we bring back to the front of our mind the fact that we have a God who is full of loving kindness and tender mercy, even when we are faithless and rebellious. That we have a God who doesn't expect perfection out of us all the time. A God who knows how weak we are at times. And so David, in worshiping God, he's just stirring up this remembrance of, man, he's healed me. He's redeemed my life. How many of you are here and you come to church and you are full of gratitude for what God has done in your life? Raise your hand. How many of you are here and you go, man, God has redeemed me from a pit before in my life? How many of you had God being provision when you needed it and you were desperate? How many of you had God heal you at some point? How many of you should be dead or in prison right now if it wasn't for God? Some of you are like, none of us truly know where we would be if it wasn't for the fact that God intervenes on our behalf many times in ways we have no idea. There are times God's working on your behalf and you are completely ignorant to it. And so when we get here and our worship team says, let's lift our hands, let's applaud, let's clap, let's shout for joy, they're not doing it to hype you up. They're helping you redirect your focus and your attention and express your gratitude to the God who's done all these things for us. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm such an entitled brat. I forget the good things God did in my life last week. And I'm like, God, why didn't you do this? And that's not the posture we want before God. How many of you want to come to God with gratitude in your heart? You want to come saying, God, you have been faithful and you have been good. And so when our teams, which by the way, brings up the question, why are people raising their hands? Some of you are back row, kind of like coffee in your hand, like just checking things out. That's great, by the way. We want people here who are just like kicking the tires. But I know sometimes you look up at the people here in the front, you're like, those people are nuts. Why is that lady getting all excited and crying up there? And I just want to tell you, whenever you think about worship, one of the most important things is to recognize that you need to care more what God thinks than anybody else, first of all. When somebody, you watch like a game show and somebody wins, $25,000, they start jumping around, picking up the game show host and dancing them up and down. God has given you life. He's forgiven you for everything you've ever done wrong. And he's redeeming you from all the messes that you and I make. Come on, we can get excited for God, right? We don't have to be quiet. And I know some of you guys, you're like, listen, it's just not me. I'm more reserved. Yeah, but you make a birdie putt and you dance around the green like Happy Gilmore riding your putter. And then you come to church and you're like, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just saying God's good enough for you to not be that worried. And when you look at worship in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, you probably know this already, but most of the Old Testament written in Hebrew, New Testament in Greek. And so the words that we translate for worship and praise, and these are words that are originally written in different language, but oftentimes are actually descriptions of physical postures, body positions. So the most common word that we translate worship in the New Testament is a Greek word proskuneo. And the literal translation of proskuneo, pros is toward, kuneo is like kissing. It means to kiss toward. That's what worship we translate. Now, even in the Koine Greek, they understood it as an act of bowing or reverence. But it literally comes from like to kiss a hand or to kiss toward to show. Aren't you glad worship isn't like, right? It's not that weird. But some of you are like, yeah, but it's kind of weird, clapping and getting loud. Know this, your body posture, you want it to reflect what's going on in your heart. That's why we raise our hands and why we clap and why we get excited. And some of you will shout and cheer when your team scores a touchdown or wins the Super Bowl. Wow, you're just running around. Then you get to church and you're like, settle down. Let's not be known as that weird church. Next thing you know, someone's running around with a flag in the back, right? Chiefs fans, mostly. Right. I had to throw that in there for a minute. Listen, I'm not trying to throw shade your way, but here's what I want to encourage you. As excited as you get for your sports team, or when you accomplish something, and or your kid comes home and they did something great on the baseball field, it's like, let God know that you really mean it. That's why last Sunday, we all got on our knees together, if you were here, and we let our body position reflect what was happening in our hearts. God, we're coming to you and asking for forgiveness and confession. And when we come and we raise our hands, we're saying, God, I'm coming to bring something to you. I'm not coming to take, I'm coming to give. You've blessed me so much. And so again, when our worship team is leading us and they're helping us, they're not trying to hype you up. They're trying to normalize expressing biblical worship to God. And if you're new and you're checking things out, you can just start down here. You can just be like, one-handed, tap your heart. It's okay. You can take steps. I remember one of my good buddies here, he was like, man, I remember the first day, he came from a Catholic church. He's like, I came into Daybreak, I was like, those weirdos in the front. And then 2 years later, he's like up in the front, hands up, crying. I'm like, what happened to you, Bill? And what happened is God had saved him from so much that when he came into church, he's like, I don't care anymore. I just want God to know my whole heart, my whole body, my whole life, it's for you, God. I want to bless you back. Psalm 103, verse 11. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his mercy toward those who fear him. As far as, this is the best part, as far as the east is from the west, I don't know how far that is, but it's as far as could be. So far has he removed our transgressions or our sins from us. Some of you come into church feeling guilty. You're like, I don't feel like I can worship God. Not after what I did this week. Not after what I said to that person. Not after I gave into that temptation again. When we worship God, we're reminding ourselves that God forgives us. Verse 13, as a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. By the way, it doesn't mean he remembers like you're just dust. What it means is he remembers how frail you are, that he created you out of dust. It's God being realistic about my condition and your condition, that we are always imperfect in our faith. And despite that, he says, as far as the east is from the west, that's how far I'm going to remove your transgressions. So if you show up and you feel just full of shame and regret and guilt, There's no better place to be than in the house of the Lord, worshiping God with your imperfect worship, but saying, God, I'm still bringing it before you. If you're taking notes, would you write this down? Worship reminds us that even though we are frail, we are forgiven. Even though we're imperfect, when God looks at us, his heart is full of loving kindness and mercy toward us. And if you feel too guilty to come to church, it's the right place to go. It's the right place to be. Lastly, if you're taking notes, we're going to wrap up with this. Worship leads my heart back toward God. I don't know about you, but in my life, my mind, my attention, my affections can so easily just get distracted and pulled off. And I believe that God gave us the gift of worship as a way to lead our hearts back toward him. Now, if you remember, I told you at the very beginning today, worship is not about what we get, it's about what we give. It's our chance to bless God back. But like every other area of our lives, you can't outgive God. If you give financially to be generous, God blesses you back more than you could ever give. And the same is true in our worship. We show up to worship him, but when we bless him, he rains blessing down back on us. And one of the things that he does is he takes our distracted, fearful, anxious minds and he rains peace. He takes us from feeling like we are without a place, without a home, not at rest, to a place of going, I have a God. He loves me. I'm safe in his hands. Worship leads our heart back toward God. When I travel, sometimes if I'm traveling without Corey, when I'm coming on my way home, I will often put on songs on a playlist that we listened to maybe when we were dating or when we first got married. Sometimes if I'm driving back down from somewhere up north, I'm passing through LA. When we were dating, we lived up in the LA area, and there was this really cheesy radio station up there, Coast 103.5. Anybody remember that one if you lived up there? Just the cheesiest love songs, and they had a radio host named Ted Ziegenbush. And Ted Ziegenbush would take like call-in dedications. It was so weird. Kara, Kyle's calling in from El Monte. And he wants you to know that he wants to, and then you're just like, this is disgusting. And then Celine Dion song comes on right afterward. Yeah. Thank you, Marcus. How many know Marcus always has my back? You guys should get a Pastor Marcus in your life. And when I hear a song like that, it gets me excited with anticipation to go see my bride. It just reminds me of all the good times and what a great mom she's been and a great wife she's been over the years. And these songs will come on, and now my heart is back toward her. So when I get home, I'm like, I'm just feeling it. And that's the funny thing about music. Music brings emotion to a thought or an idea. And when you think especially about worship music, God gave us worship to be music because it brings emotion to our prayers to God. And you probably have never thought about this before, but like, where did music come from? Who invented music? The earliest records of music we have, not like records, like the idea of music, musical instruments, are what we read about in the Bible. God is the one who came up with the idea that certain sounds are pleasing to our ear and certain sounds are not. Marcus, play like a not a chord. Just that still sounds good. Just smash two hands there. Okay, that's not pleasing. If we walked in, you heard that, right? But why is it that certain sounds, when they come together, like Marcus can only do, even when you're trying to be bad, it still sounds good. Right, who made up that when like a really good drum beat comes on, that a baby who's 2 years old in diapers is going? No one had to tell the baby to dance. They just felt that beat. Are you guys with me? And when you hear a chord or a beautiful song, it's like whatever style of music you like, it moves you. God gave us music. He invented music, and the original intent for music was that our hearts would be moved toward God. And so that's why when we show up at church, we have prayers, worship, but those prayers are set to music. And what that does, I don't know about you, but it softens my heart toward God. I can be so distracted and thinking about something else, and then when I finally make the choice, no. If I'm driving in the car and I choose, I'm gonna put some worship music on. If I'm going for a run, I choose a worship playlist. So quickly I move from just being distracted or distant to, man, God, you are so good. You are my heavenly dad, and you're with me right now. So this morning we saved a little bit of time at the end of our service to worship God. And I want to ask you to stand with me and take a few minutes with me to own the fact that you are giving a gift to God. Even if you're not super into worship, even if you got here late today because you're like, I'll get here in time for the message. We tricked you. Save some time at the end. And I want you to just close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to begin to recount, like David did in Psalm 103. What are the benefits of being a child of God? What are the things that God has done in your life? Maybe start with something this week that God did to show you again that he loves you and he's watching over you. And then I want to ask you just to quietly begin to, as the worship team comes out, just begin to whisper praise to the Lord. Tell him how grateful you are. Remind yourself that he is full of loving kindness, that he's forgiving, he's patient with you. Maybe think through one of the darkest times of your life and how God rescued you out of that pit. Just begin to worship him. Begin to whisper praise to him in the room. God, I thank you. I could never worship you enough. I could never thank you enough. But today I'm setting aside these few minutes with my heart, with my body posture, with my voice, to tell you how grateful I am and how much I love you. Just go ahead, continue to do that. Worship in